Through the fury of a snowstorm, a golden retriever stood tied to a post, its thick coat matted with frost, and its eyes filled with a silent, desperate plea. Who could leave such a devoted dog to face the freezing storm alone? What cruel twist of fate brought it here, and what secrets could this loyal companion be guarding? The streets of Winter Haven were eerily quiet that night, as the snowstorm swallowed the city in its icy embrace. The wind howled like a relentless predator, whipping through empty alleys and desolate sidewalks. Streetlights flickered sporadically, their beams dimmed by the curtain of snow falling thick and fast. Winter Haven was known for its serene, almost sleepy charm, but tonight it felt like the whole city was holding its breath. Leo tightened his scarf against the biting wind as he navigated his old pickup truck down a narrow street. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up with the onslaught of snow, and his headlights barely pierced the dense whiteout. Retired for nearly 5 years now, Leo had found solace in the quiet life. Once an investigative journalist with a reputation for uncovering hidden truths, he had left that world behind after losing his wife in a car accident. Solitude had become his companion, but even solitude didn't feel so bad compared to the storm outside. As he turned onto Elm Street, the headlights caught something unusual. A golden figure, motionless, tethered to a lamp post. Leo squinted, leaning closer to the windshield. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light or maybe a discarded coat. But as he drove closer, his chest tightened. It wasn't a coat. It was a dog. Stopping abruptly, Leo threw on his parka and stepped into the storm. The icy wind cut through him like knives, but he pushed forward, his boots crunching through the freshly fallen snow. The dog, a golden retriever, stood tied to the post with a fraying rope. Its thick golden coat was matted and crusted with ice, and it shivered violently in the unforgiving cold. The dog's head hung low, its ears flattened against its skull. Its eyes, glassy but still alive, met Leo's, pleading silently. "Hey there, buddy," Leo said softly, crouching to the dog's level. His voice cracked through the howling wind, a gentle note in the chaos. "What are you doing out here?" The dog didn't bark or growl. It simply looked at him, trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and fear. Leo reached out cautiously, letting the dog sniff his gloved hand. The creature flinched at first, but then leaned forward slightly as if sensing his kindness. Leo's eyes shifted to the rope tied tightly around the lamppost and then to the dog's neck. A worn leather collar hung loosely around it, cracked from age and exposure. There was no tag, no nameplate, just a simple buckle holding it together. He frowned. Who would leave a dog out here in weather like this? "It's okay," Leo murmured, his hands working to untie the rope. "You're coming with me. Let's get you out of this mess." The rope came free with a final tug, and Leo wrapped it around his hand like a makeshift leash. The dog hesitated, its paws slipping slightly on the ice, but with a few gentle words, it followed him to the truck. Lifting the dog into the passenger seat, Leo winced at how light it felt. Beneath the thick fur, he could tell it was underweight, its ribs faintly visible even through its coat. The truck's heater roared to life as Leo climbed back into the driver's seat. The warmth began to fill the cab, and the dog let out a low whine, curling into the seat and resting its head on its paws. Leo glanced at it as he adjusted the dials, his investigative instincts stirring. "Who left you out there, huh? And why?" The drive back to Leo's small home on Birch Lane was slow and treacherous, the storm refusing to relent. When they finally arrived, the dog raised its head, looking out the window with cautious curiosity. Leo opened the door and motioned for it to follow. "Come on, let's get you inside." Inside, the house was modest but warm. A crackling fire in the hearth cast flickering shadows across the living room. Leo fetched an old blanket, laying it near the fireplace before coaxing the dog to sit. It settled hesitantly, curling up as close to the fire as it dared. Now able to see the dog clearly, Leo knelt beside it, inspecting its collar. The leather was old, frayed at the edges, and smelled faintly of mildew. There was no identifying tag or engraving, nothing to indicate where the dog had come from or to whom it belonged. "You've had a rough go of it, haven't you?" Leo said softly, running a hand gently over the dog's fur. The dog flinched slightly, but didn't move away, its tail giving the faintest wag. Leo smiled. "You're a fighter, though, I can tell." He filled a bowl with warm water and another with scraps of leftover chicken and rice. The dog hesitated, eyeing the food cautiously before tentatively taking a bite. Within moments, it was devouring the meal, its hunger outweighing its initial wariness. Leo watched silently, leaning against the kitchen counter. He couldn't shake the question swirling in his mind. Why had the dog been left there? Was it an act of neglect, or was there something more to the story? His gut told him it wasn't a random occurrence. The fraying rope, the worn collar, everything pointed to a history that wasn't yet clear. As the dog finished eating, it looked up at Leo, its eyes brighter now, filled with gratitude. Slowly, it padded over and nudged his leg with its nose. Leo chuckled, kneeling to scratch behind its ears. "Guess we're stuck together for now, huh?" The dog leaned into his touch, its tail wagging more confidently this time. For the first time in what felt like years, Leo felt a spark of something he thought he'd lost: connection. The loneliness that had enveloped his life since his wife's death seemed to recede, even if just for a moment. "You need a name," Leo mused aloud, looking into the dog's golden brown eyes. "But we'll figure that out later." That night the dog, still nameless, slept soundly on the blanket near the fire, its breathing steady and calm. Leo sat nearby, a notebook in hand, scribbling down thoughts and questions about the strange discovery. As he wrote, his gaze occasionally drifted to the dog, whose presence filled the room with a quiet warmth. Outside, the storm raged on, but within the walls of Leo's home, there was a newfound sense of peace. Little did Leo know, this unassuming golden retriever would soon lead him down a path he thought he had left behind. A path filled with danger, secrets, and an unexpected chance at redemption. The storm had passed, leaving Winter Haven wrapped in a blanket of fresh snow. Morning light streamed through the windows of Leo's modest living room, casting a warm glow over the still sleeping golden retriever curled by the fireplace. The dog, still nameless, seemed peaceful in its slumber, its chest rising and falling steadily. For the first time in what seemed like years, Leo felt a sense of purpose tugging at the edges of his solitude. With a steaming cup of coffee in hand, Leo sat on the sofa, eyeing the dog's collar. The worn leather had caught his attention the night before, and the investigative itch in him refused to let it go. He placed the coffee mug on the table, knelt beside the dog, and carefully removed the collar. The leather felt rough against his fingers, its edges frayed and cracked. Turning it over, he noticed a faint line near the buckle, as if the layers of leather had separated slightly. Curious, he pressed along the seam. To his surprise, the edge gave way, revealing a small hidden pocket. Inside was a USB drive, no bigger than his thumb, tucked neatly into the crevice. Leo's heart raced. "What's this?" he murmured, glancing at the dog, which stirred slightly but remained asleep. He rose, grabbing his laptop from the desk. Plugging in the USB, he tapped his fingers on the table, waiting for it to load. The drive contained a single folder, ominously labeled Celeste Files. Clicking it open, Leo found a series of documents, voice recordings, and a video file. The video was dated 2 weeks prior. His curiosity overwhelming, he opened the video first. The screen lit up with the image of a young woman sitting in a dimly lit room. She looked tired, her chestnut hair slightly disheveled, but her green eyes burned with determination. "My name is Celeste Harper," the woman began, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it." Leo leaned forward, his chest tightening. "I've uncovered something big," she continued. "A trafficking ring operating right here in Winter Haven. It's not just criminals, it's people in power, politicians, business leaders, names you wouldn't believe, and they'll do anything to keep it quiet." Celeste paused, taking a shaky breath. "I've left everything I have in this file, but if you're seeing this, it also means they've found me. Please, whoever you are, make sure this gets to someone who can stop them." The video ended abruptly, leaving Leo staring at the screen in stunned silence. He swallowed hard, his journalist instincts roaring back to life. This wasn't just a random USB. This was evidence, and it was deadly serious. He turned to the dog, now awake and watching him with those soulful brown eyes. "So, you belong to Celeste," Leo muttered, piecing things together. "She trusted you to keep this safe." Leo spent the next hour combing through the files. The documents listed names, financial records, and meeting logs, all pointing to a massive operation that stretched beyond Winter Haven. Among the names, Leo recognized a few: local politicians, a prominent real estate developer, even a senior officer in the city's police department. The weight of it pressed heavily on him. This wasn't just an expose, it was a death sentence for anyone caught holding it. No wonder Celeste had hidden the USB so carefully. No wonder she had paid the ultimate price. Determined to learn more, Leo picked up his phone and dialed an old friend. Alan Grant was a sergeant in the Winter Haven Police Department, one of the few people Leo still trusted in the city's law enforcement. "Leo?" Alan's voice crackled through the line. "Been a while. What's going on?" "I need to meet," Leo said, glancing at the USB on the table. "It's important." An hour later, Leo sat across from Alan in a small cafe on the edge of town. The air smelled of fresh coffee and pastries, a stark contrast to the gravity of their conversation. Leo slid the USB across the table. This belonged to Celeste Harper. Alan's expression darkened. "Celeste, the journalist who disappeared? I heard about her. Never solved the case." "She didn't just disappear," Leo said, his voice low. "She was murdered, and this is why." Alan plugged the USB into his tablet, scrolling through the files. His face grew more serious with every passing second. This is massive," he muttered. "Do you know what you've got here?" "Enough to get killed for," Leo replied bluntly. "But I need answers first. What do you know about her?" Alan hesitated, then sighed. "Celeste was digging into some powerful people. She'd come to me a few times asking about strange police activity, officers looking the other way, evidence disappearing. I tried to help where I could, but she kept her cards close. If she had this much dirt, no wonder they wanted her gone." Leo nodded. "And the dog?" "That's hers," Alan confirmed. "Amber. She loved that dog. Always said Amber was her good luck charm." He paused, looking at Leo. "How did you end up with her?" Leo explained the storm, the lamppost, and Amber's condition. Alan shook his head in disbelief. They probably dumped Amber there, thinking she wouldn't survive, but Celeste must have hidden the USB in the collar, knowing Amber would lead someone to it. Leo glanced out the window, watching the snow swirl lazily in the breeze. The dog, now named Amber, had been more than just a loyal companion. She had been Celeste's last hope. "What now?" Alan asked, his voice tinged with concern. Leo looked back at him, his jaw set. "We finish what Celeste started." That evening, back at home, Leo knelt beside Amber, running a hand gently over her fur. "Amber," he said softly, testing the name. The dog's ears perked up, and her tail wagged faintly. "Looks like you've got a name now," Leo said with a small smile, "and a job to do." Amber leaned into his touch, her warmth grounding him. Leo knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Amber by his side, he felt a flicker of resolve. Celeste had entrusted Amber with her legacy, and now that responsibility rested with him. As the fire crackled and shadows danced across the walls, Leo sat back, the USB resting in his hand. The secrets it held were dangerous, but they were also the key to justice. And for the first time in years, Leo felt alive again, driven not by the pain of his past, but by the promise of uncovering the truth. The streets of Winter Haven buzzed faintly with life as Leo stepped outside, Amber trotting faithfully by his side. The snowstorm had left the city blanketed in a clean, pristine white, though the tranquility belied the growing storm of danger brewing beneath the surface. Leo had spent the previous night poring over Celeste's files, piecing together fragments of her investigation. Each document added another layer to the web of corruption she had uncovered, but there were still too many unanswered questions, and Amber seemed to hold the key. Leo glanced down at Amber, who walked with purpose, her nose twitching against the cold air. Since learning her name and her connection to Celeste, he couldn't shake the feeling that Amber wasn't just any dog. There was something about her, a sense of intelligence and intuition that went beyond the ordinary. "All right, girl," Leo muttered. "If you know something, now's the time to show me." Amber seemed to understand. She paused briefly, sniffing the ground, then began to tug at her leash, pulling Leo down a narrow side street. The street was quiet, lined with old, weathered buildings, their facades coated in frost. Amber led him to a worn path that curved out of the city and toward the outskirts, where urban life gave way to a sparse collection of homes and abandoned lots. The path ended at a small, decrepit house on the edge of a wooded area. The structure looked like it hadn't been occupied in years, its windows boarded up, the paint peeling from its walls. Amber barked softly, her tail wagging as she stood at the front door. "This is it, huh?" Leo murmured, pulling his coat tighter against the biting wind. He tried the door, but it was locked. Glancing around, he found a rusted key under a loose stone near the steps, likely Celeste's own method of access. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior thick with the smell of dust and decay. Amber walked confidently ahead, leading Leo up a narrow staircase to a small attic room. The room was cramped but tidy, with a small cot in one corner and a desk cluttered with papers and notebooks. It was clear this had been Celeste's hideout, a place she used to piece together her investigation away from prying eyes. Leo scanned the desk, his fingers brushing against a leather-bound journal. Opening it, he found Celeste's handwriting, sharp and meticulous. The entries detailed her work, the names she had uncovered, the connections she was beginning to make. Each page revealed more about the sprawling network of corruption she had unearthed, a trafficking ring that funneled victims through Winter Haven under the guise of legitimate business. One entry caught Leo's attention. "They're on to me. I've seen the same car parked near my apartment for days now. I think it's him, the officer in the files. I have to move. Amber will keep the USB safe. If anything happens to me, she'll find someone who can finish this. She always knows who to trust." Leo's throat tightened as he read the words. Celeste had known her time was running out. She had put her faith in Amber to carry on her mission, and now that mission had fallen to him. As Leo flipped through the journal, a sharp bark from Amber snapped him out of his thoughts. She stood at the attic window, growling low and steady. Leo moved to her side and peeked through the gap in the boards. A black SUV idled on the street below, its windows tinted, the engine humming faintly in the cold air. Leo's stomach dropped. "Damn it, they've found us." He grabbed the journal and stuffed it into his coat pocket, then turned to Amber. "We're leaving, now." Moving quickly but cautiously, Leo and Amber slipped out the back door and into the woods behind the house. The crunch of snow beneath their feet was loud in the stillness, and Leo's heart pounded as he glanced over his shoulder. The SUV's engine had stopped, and he could hear voices in the distance. They were coming. Amber led the way, her movements swift and purposeful, as if she knew the terrain better than he did. They wove through the trees, ducking under branches and skirting around drifts of snow. The voices grew fainter, but Leo didn't stop until they reached a clearing near a frozen creek. There, he paused to catch his breath, his hands resting on his knees. Amber stayed close, her ears perked, her body tense. She watched the woods behind them, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of pursuit. "You're amazing, you know that?" Leo said, reaching down to scratch behind her ears. Amber leaned into his touch briefly, before returning her focus to the woods. When they returned to Leo's house, the gravity of their situation began to sink in. Whoever had been following them wasn't just after Celeste's files. They were after anyone connected to her, and that now included Leo and Amber. His small, quiet life had been shattered, replaced by a dangerous game of cat and mouse. Leo spread Celeste's journal and the USB files across his kitchen table, trying to make sense of it all. The names on the list began to form a pattern. Local officials, law enforcement, and business leaders, all with ties to a shipping company that operated out of Winter Haven's docks. Celeste had uncovered a pipeline for trafficking, hidden in plain sight. As Leo worked, Amber lay at his feet, her head resting on her paws. Every so often she would glance up at him, her eyes filled with a quiet determination that mirrored his own. She wasn't just a dog, he realized. She was his partner. "I don't know how we're going to pull this off," Leo muttered, running a hand through his hair. "But we'll figure it out. Together." Amber's tail thumped softly against the floor, a silent vote of confidence. By midnight, Leo had a plan, or at least the beginnings of one. The files pointed to a key player in the trafficking ring, a shipping magnate named Victor Kane, whose name appeared repeatedly in Celeste's notes. Victor was powerful, untouchable in most circles, but Leo knew where to start digging. He also knew it wouldn't be long before Victor's men came knocking again. The SUV at the attic was proof they were watching, waiting for Leo to slip up. He would have to stay one step ahead, and Amber would be his guide. As he prepared for the days ahead, Leo knelt beside Amber and looked into her eyes. "You saved me today," he said softly. "And I won't let them hurt you. I promise." Amber licked his hand, her gesture both reassuring and unwavering. Together, they would unravel the tangled web Celeste had left behind, and they would bring the truth to light, no matter the cost. Winter Haven was cloaked in darkness, its streets lit only by the faint glow of scattered streetlights and the occasional passing car. The silence of the night was broken only by the crunch of snow underfoot and the distant hum of an engine. Leo gripped Amber's leash tightly as they moved quickly through the shadows, every nerve in his body on edge. Behind them, the black SUV had returned, its headlights scanning the streets like the cold, unblinking eyes of a predator. Leo knew they didn't have much time. The men inside weren't just chasing him. They were hunting for the files, and they wouldn't hesitate to kill to get them back. Amber tugged gently on the leash, leading Leo down a narrow alleyway that connected to a network of side streets. She moved with an urgency that Leo had come to trust implicitly. Her senses were sharper than his, and in moments like these it felt as though she understood the stakes as well as he did. The chase led them to the industrial outskirts of Winter Haven, a sprawling area of abandoned warehouses and forgotten infrastructure. Amber paused at the entrance to one of the buildings, her nose twitching as she sniffed the air. The building was massive, its metal walls streaked with rust and its windows shattered by years of neglect. "You sure about this, girl?" Leo whispered, glancing over his shoulder. The SUV had slowed down, its occupants likely searching the area on foot now. Amber barked softly in response, her tail wagging once before she led him inside. The warehouse was dark and cold, the air heavy with the scent of damp metal and decay. Leo clicked on his flashlight, its narrow beam cutting through the shadows. They moved cautiously through the space, Amber's ears swiveling at every sound. The floor was littered with debris, scraps of wood, broken glass, and rusted metal pieces that creaked under their weight. As they reached the center of the warehouse, Amber froze, her body tense, a low growl rumbled in her throat. "What is it?" Leo whispered, stopping in his tracks. Before he could react, a loud click echoed through the space, followed by a sharp hum. The overhead lights flickered on, bathing the room in a harsh fluorescent glow. Leo shielded his eyes, his heart pounding as he realized the trap had been sprung. From the shadows, 3 men emerged, their faces obscured by ski masks. One of them held a crowbar, another a gun, and the third carried a small device with wires trailing from it. "You've been busy, Mr. Donovan," the man with the gun said, his voice calm but menacing. "We've been looking for you." Amber barked furiously, stepping in front of Leo as if to shield him. Her golden coat glistened under the flickering lights, her stance low and ready. Leo raised his hand slowly, his mind racing. "If you think I'm going to hand over those files, you're wasting your time." The man with the device chuckled. "Oh, we don't need your cooperation. We've already anticipated every move you'd make." He pressed a button on the device, and the hum intensified. Leo's flashlight flickered and died, and he realized with horror that the ground near him was now laced with thin, barely visible wires. It was a trap. A crude but effective electric grid set up to incapacitate anyone who stepped onto it. Before Leo could react, Amber darted forward, her sharp eyes catching the pattern of wires. She barked once, loud and insistent, before nudging Leo's leg to push him backward. Her movements were precise, avoiding the wires with an agility that seemed almost superhuman. "Amber, no!" Leo shouted, but the dog ignored him, weaving through the trap with remarkable speed. She lunged at the man with the device, her teeth sinking into his arm before he could react. The man screamed, dropping the device, which clattered to the floor and sent a brief spark through the air. The sudden commotion startled the other two men. The one with the gun aimed at Amber, but she moved too quickly, darting to the side and knocking over a stack of rusted metal barrels. The noise was deafening, and in the confusion, Leo saw his opportunity. Grabbing a nearby wooden plank, he swung it at the man with the crowbar, knocking him off balance. The gunman turned toward Leo, but Amber was already on him, her jaws clamping down on his leg. He cried out in pain, dropping the gun as he tried to shake her off. "Amber, back!" Leo shouted. She released the man and retreated to his side, her chest heaving as she growled at their attackers. The men, realizing they were outmatched, stumbled toward the exit. "This isn't over, Donovan," one of them shouted before disappearing into the night. The warehouse fell silent once more, save for the sound of Leo's heavy breathing and Amber's soft whimpers. She limped slightly as she walked back to him, her golden coat now streaked with dirt and a small cut on her leg. Leo knelt beside her, his hands trembling as he examined the injury. "You're hurt," he murmured, his voice thick with guilt. "You saved me, and now you're hurt." Amber licked his hand, her eyes full of reassurance. Despite her injury, she wagged her tail weakly, as if to say she was fine as long as he was safe. Leo sighed, stroking her fur gently. "You're incredible, you know that?" he said softly. "But we can't stay here. They'll be back." He picked her up carefully, cradling her in his arms as he made his way out of the warehouse. The cold air hit him like a wall as they stepped outside, but he pressed on, heading toward the safety of his truck parked a few blocks away. Back at home, Leo cleaned Amber's wound as she lay quietly on the floor. Her eyes never left his, and the trust between them deepened with every moment. He couldn't shake the feeling that without her, he wouldn't have made it out alive. "You're more than just a dog," Leo said as he bandaged her leg. "You're my partner, and I promise I won't let them hurt you again." Amber rested her head on his lap, her tail wagging faintly in agreement. Though the night had been harrowing, their bond had grown stronger, forged in the crucible of danger. As the city slept, Leo sat beside Amber, his mind racing with plans for their next move. He knew the fight wasn't over, but with Amber by his side, he felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. Together, they would finish what Celeste had started and bring justice to Winter Haven. The snowstorm returned, painting the abandoned harbor in a ghostly white. The icy wind howled across the port, tugging at the empty shipping containers stacked like forgotten memories. Floodlights, scattered across the docks, cast long shadows that flickered with every gust. Leo and Amber moved cautiously through the maze of containers, their breath visible in the freezing air. Leo clutched the USB tightly in his hand, his fingers numb but steady. Amber, her golden coat dusted with snow, stayed close, her sharp eyes scanning every shadow. The quiet wasn't comforting. It was the kind of quiet that warned of danger waiting to strike. Behind them, the echo of footsteps grew louder. The pursuers weren't far. Leo knew they were outnumbered and outgunned, but he couldn't stop now. The files in his hand weren't just evidence. They were Celeste's final hope for justice, and Amber by his side was his only chance of making it out alive. The footsteps stopped abruptly, replaced by a voice that sliced through the frigid air. "Donovan!" The man's tone was smooth, almost amused. "It's over. Hand over the USB, and maybe we'll let you walk away." Leo's jaw tightened as he glanced at Amber, who stood rigid, growling softly. He recognized the voice. Victor Kane, the man at the center of the trafficking ring Celeste had uncovered. Kane was calculating and ruthless, the type of man who didn't make empty threats. Leo took a deep breath, his mind racing. "Not a chance," he muttered under his breath. He gestured to Amber to stay close, then ducked behind a stack of containers as a gunshot echoed across the dock. The bullet hit the metal with a deafening clang, sending shards of rust into the air. Amber barked sharply, her body low and tense. She tugged at the leash as if urging Leo forward. "Go, girl," Leo whispered, releasing her, "but be careful." Amber darted ahead, her movements swift and precise. She disappeared around a corner, her golden fur blending with the snow. Leo moved in the opposite direction, hoping to draw the men away from her. His heart pounded as he weaved through the containers, the cold biting at his face. Leo reached the edge of the dock where a small service boat lay tied to a post. His escape route was in sight, but so were his pursuers. Kane and 2 armed men emerged from the shadows, their guns trained on him. "You should have stayed out of this," Kane said, his voice low and dangerous. "Now you've left me no choice." Leo stepped back, his foot brushing against the frozen edge of the dock. He held up the USB, his hand trembling not from the cold, but from the weight of the moment. "This ends here, Kane. You can't hide the truth forever," Kane smirked, raising his gun. "No, but I can bury it, starting with you." Before Kane could pull the trigger, a blur of gold streaked through the snow. Amber lunged at him, her teeth sinking into his arm. Kane cried out, stumbling backward and dropping his weapon. The 2 men with him turned their guns toward Amber. "Amber, no!" Leo shouted, but the dog was relentless. She darted between the men, knocking one off balance and sending him crashing into the icy ground. The other man fired a shot, the sound ripping through the night. Amber let out a sharp yelp, her body jerking as the bullet grazed her side. She staggered but didn't fall, her fierce determination keeping her on her feet. She turned back to Kane, who was scrambling to retrieve his gun, and lunged again, forcing him to retreat. Amber's actions created just enough of a distraction for Leo to act. He sprinted to the service boat, untying it with shaking hands and starting the engine. The noise drew the men's attention, but by the time they aimed their weapons, the boat was already pulling away from the dock. Leo looked back, his heart breaking as he saw Amber standing in the snow, her golden coat stained with blood. Her body trembled, but she stood tall, her eyes fixed on him. She barked once, a final act of defiance, before collapsing onto the ground. "Amber!" Leo shouted, his voice raw with grief. But the boat was already drifting into the dark, icy waters. The USB in his pocket felt heavier than ever, its significance magnified by the sacrifice Amber had made. Hours later, Leo walked into the Winter Haven Police Department, his clothes soaked and his face pale with exhaustion. He placed the USB on the desk in front of Sergeant Alan Grant, his old friend and trusted ally. "This is it," Leo said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything Celeste was fighting for." Alan scanned the files, his expression growing darker with each passing second. This is enough to bring them all down. You've done it, Leo." Leo shook his head, his thoughts consumed by Amber. "No, she did it." Amber's sacrifice allowed Leo to escape and deliver the files that dismantled one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in Winter Haven. Her courage and loyalty had turned the tide, giving Leo the chance to honor Celeste's memory and bring justice to the city. Though her golden coat no longer shone under the pale light of the snowy harbor, her legacy burned brightly in Leo's heart. Amber wasn't just a dog. She was a hero. The following week saw Winter Haven transformed. The once quiet town became a hub of legal and media activity as the files Leo delivered sent shockwaves through the community. The USB, protected with Amber's life, proved to be a damning trove of evidence. It laid bare the intricate web of corruption and human trafficking that had thrived under the noses of the city's citizens. Victor Kane and his network of collaborators were swiftly arrested. The names of powerful politicians, business leaders, and even law enforcement officers were splashed across headlines, their crimes exposed for all to see. The courts moved quickly, with Leo playing a central role as a key witness. His testimony, combined with the evidence on the USB, left no room for doubt. Justice, it seemed, had finally caught up with them. But for Leo, the victory was bittersweet. Each time he recounted the events leading up to the arrests, his heart ached with the memory of Amber's sacrifice. He could still see her standing in the snow, her golden coat gleaming under the floodlights, her eyes filled with determination. She had saved his life and ensured the files reached their destination, but the price she paid weighed heavily on him. Winter Haven's citizens, moved by the story of Amber's bravery, began calling for her to be honored. Stories of her loyalty and courage spread far and wide, inspiring not just the city, but people across the country. It wasn't long before the mayor announced plans to commemorate Amber's sacrifice with a permanent memorial. On a crisp spring morning, the city gathered in Winter Haven Park for the unveiling of Amber's monument. The air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, and the park buzzed with the soft hum of conversations. At the center of the crowd stood Leo, his hands clasped tightly as he waited for the ceremony to begin. The mayor stepped forward, her voice carrying over the gathered crowd. Today, we honor a hero. Not just any hero, but one who reminded us of the best qualities we can aspire to: loyalty, courage, and selflessness. Amber gave her life to protect the truth and bring justice to our city. This monument will stand as a testament to her bravery and a reminder of the profound bond between humans and animals. As the mayor pulled back the cloth covering the statue, the crowd erupted into applause. The monument depicted Amber in her prime, standing tall with her head held high, her eyes full of the determination that defined her. At the base of the statue, a plaque read, "In memory of Amber, a loyal companion and fearless hero, whose sacrifice brought light to the darkness, a Winter Haven will never forget." Leo felt his chest tighten as he stepped closer to the statue. The likeness was uncanny, capturing Amber's spirit perfectly. He placed a hand on the cool bronze, his throat tight with emotion. After the ceremony, people lingered around the monument, sharing stories of Amber and the impact her bravery had on the city. Children asked their parents about the golden dog who had saved a man and brought down dangerous criminals. Dog owners hugged their pets a little tighter, inspired by the tale of Amber's loyalty. For Leo, the monument was more than just a tribute. It was a symbol of hope and resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest times, a single act of courage could make all the difference. Though the loss of Amber left a hole in Leo's heart, her legacy gave him a renewed sense of purpose. He began volunteering at the local animal shelter, sharing her story with others and encouraging them to adopt and care for animals in need. Every morning, Leo visited the park, sitting by Amber's statue with a cup of coffee in hand. He would talk to her as if she were still there, sharing updates about the city, the case, and the lives she had touched. In those quiet moments, he felt her presence, a comforting reminder that she had never truly left. Amber's story became a legend in Winter Haven, a tale passed down through generations. The golden dog who had stood against corruption, who had sacrificed everything to protect the truth, would forever be remembered as a hero. And for Leo, she would always be more than that. She was his partner, his protector, and his friend, a light in the darkest of nights. The sun rose gently over Winter Haven, casting golden rays across the city. Spring had breathed new life into the town, filling its streets with blooming flowers and birdsong. The chill of winter had faded, yet for Leo, the warmth of the season couldn't entirely thaw the ache in his heart. Amber's absence lingered like a shadow, but so did her legacy. Her monument in Winter Haven Park had become a gathering place for those inspired by her story. Each time Leo visited, he found flowers, letters, and even small dog treats left by strangers who felt a connection to the golden retriever who had given so much. But Leo's days weren't consumed by grief. He had found a way to honor Amber by giving another dog a chance at a new life. The decision to adopt hadn't been easy. Every visit to the local animal shelter tugged at his heart, the sight of so many eager eyes and wagging tails reminding him of Amber. But one day, a little dog caught his attention. She was a young Labrador mix no more than a few months old, with soft golden fur and big curious brown eyes. She was smaller than the other puppies, shy yet hopeful, her tail wagging hesitantly as Leo approached. "She's been through a lot," the shelter worker explained, "found abandoned in the cold, just like your Amber." Leo knelt, holding out his hand. The puppy sniffed it cautiously before licking his fingers. In that moment, Leo felt something shift. It wasn't the same as it had been with Amber. This was different, new, hopeful. "Hope," he said softly, the name forming naturally. "That's what I'll call you." Hope adapted quickly to her new home. She was playful and curious, her boundless energy a welcome contrast to the quiet solitude Leo had known for so long. She followed him everywhere, her small paws pattering on the wooden floors as she explored every corner of the house. Leo often found himself smiling, watching as Hope chased her tail or pounced on her favorite squeaky toy. She brought life back into his home, filling the spaces Amber had left behind with a new kind of warmth. But Amber was never far from Leo's thoughts. Every morning he and Hope walked to Winter Haven Park to visit Amber's statue. There, Leo would sit on the bench, Hope at his feet, and recount the story of the golden retriever who had saved his life and brought justice to the city. "This is Amber," he would tell Hope, pointing to the statue. "She was brave, loyal, and smart, just like you'll be one day." Hope would wag her tail, her head tilted as if she understood. To Leo, it felt like Amber's spirit lived on in the little dog, guiding them both. The days turned into weeks and Leo found a new rhythm to his life. He continued volunteering at the animal shelter, sharing Amber's story with anyone who would listen. Families who came to adopt would often stop him to ask about the golden retriever whose statue they had seen in the park. Amber's legacy became a bridge connecting people to the idea of second chances and the enduring bond between humans and animals. And Hope, always by Leo's side, became part of that story, a symbol of the hope that Amber had brought to the world even after her passing. One summer afternoon, Leo sat on the bench near Amber's statue, a book in hand. Hope lay curled at his feet, her tail thumping lazily against the ground. The park was bustling with life. Children played in the grass, couples strolled hand in hand, and dogs of all shapes and sizes ran free in the dog park nearby. Leo closed his book and looked up at Amber's statue. The sun reflected off the bronze, illuminating her proud stance and determined gaze. He smiled, a mixture of sadness and gratitude filling his chest. "You'd like Hope," he said softly as if Amber could hear him. "She's got your spirit. She's helping me move forward." Hope raised her head at the sound of her name, looking up at Leo with those curious eyes. He reached down, ruffling her fur. "Let's go, girl," he said, rising from the bench. "Amber would want us to keep going." As they walked away, Hope glanced back at the statue, her tail wagging briefly before she trotted after Leo. Amber's story didn't end with her sacrifice. It lived on through the monument in Winter Haven Park, through the lives she had touched, and through Hope, the little dog who had given Leo a reason to smile again. Every day, Leo carried Amber's memory with him, a reminder of her courage and loyalty. But he also carried the knowledge that her sacrifice had brought light to the darkness and hope to his heart. In the quiet moments when the world seemed still, Leo would sit with Hope and think of Amber, not with sorrow but with gratitude. She had given her life so that others could live, and her legacy would endure for as long as Leo drew breath. Amber had been his partner, his hero, and his friend. And now, through Hope, she continued to inspire him to live, to love, and to never forget the power of loyalty and courage. Amber's story is a testament to the incredible power of love, loyalty, and courage. She wasn't just a dog. She was a hero who gave everything to protect the truth. Her sacrifice not only brought justice to Winter Haven, but also left behind a legacy that continues to inspire. Through her unwavering bravery, Amber reminded us of the profound bond between humans and animals, a bond built on trust, devotion, and hope. Even though Amber is no longer by Leo's side, her spirit lives on in the monument that stands tall in Winter Haven Park, honoring her courage. It also lives on in Hope, the young dog who now fills Leo's days with joy and light. Amber's legacy is one of resilience and love, and it continues to guide Leo as he moves forward, cherishing her memory with every step. Let Amber's story inspire us to cherish the animals in our lives and the lessons they teach us about loyalty and sacrifice. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who loves animals or has been inspired by a story of courage and hope. We also encourage you to comment below and share your own stories of kindness, whether it's about a beloved pet or a moment when love and faith brought light into your life. Together, let's create a space for hope, connection, and inspiration. As we reflect on Amber's story, let us remember the love of God that surrounds us all. May Amber's sacrifice remind us of the transformative grace of loyalty and selflessness, values that reflect God's unending love for us. May God bless you and your loved ones, and may we strive to be the light in someone else's darkest hour.